All right, you guys. Hopefully everything is working. We are trying this live stream in a little different way than we did a week ago, and hopefully we've got some BH veterans and some interested folks here in the room. If I've got anybody who can shoot a chat or a comment or something saying that we are live and we're modulating correctly. I've got BHSpringSolutions co-founder, my partner Slav. He is waiting in the wings at the moment, still getting things situated on his end. We're using a software called an encoder that is necessary when we have more than one person, doing these live streams or attending a live stream like this, and so I beg your pardon for any of our stumbling here at this point. This is kind of all new stuff. I think we've got everything. I think we've got everything worked out. Anyway, it is Sunday, 1 p.m. BH veterans who are watching with us and those who are watching this as a permanent video after the live stream. Hope everything is wonderful where you are, and we're going to try to give you some content and food for the brain that's not current events and not what you see on the mainstream news and like that, and hopefully we can have a better time here than we would otherwise be. Going to see if I can get anybody to shoot me a message that says that we're doing okay, that we're being seen, and that this is working out. That this is working out all right. Do want to let everyone know in the comment. Hi James, thank you for being here. I got a thumbs up from James. Perfect. We really want to encourage questions as a part of this interaction with you, and I'll try to help with my own sound on this end. We want to encourage you to ask questions, and welcome Jeff. Good to see you here with us. You can ask questions by one of two ways. You can do that on the comment side of the live stream while the live stream is going on. Larry, thank you for being here. Ben, thank you for being here. Or you can email a question to BHSpringSolutions@gmail.com. We have that being monitored by our telephone consultant, and he will get that question to me just the same, and maybe even just a little better than on the comment side. Gary, thank you for joining us. And so that's the way we're going to try to set this up. We're going to try to have this be an hour or less today, but not sure that we're going to be making that or not. But I think Slav has a commitment, and he's going to have to depart within that time. So anyway, we're going to try to add Slav now. And folks, forgive me. I think I have started suffering with a sniffle and a cold here about the last 2 hours. So to the extent that I have to attend to that, I apologize for that very much. I'm going to see if I can add Slav here to the room, and I have. And Slav, say something so I see if I can hear you or not. And Slav, I don't have any sound coming from you. No audio at the moment. It's like you don't have a microphone modulating out of your room there. If anybody else can hear Slav and it's just me, just let me know. But I think we're having problems with hearing Slav at the moment. Tell you what, Slav, if you're okay, you give me a thumbs up. I can see you when you're off stage, and give me a thumbs up if you think you've got a microphone. Yeah, I've got a negative here that not hearing you. if you get microphone on your end, give me a thumbs up, and I'll bring you right back into the room. And otherwise, I'll start the story while you're seeing what can get situated over there. Okay, Slav and I became acquainted in 2013, and I know some of our oldest friends know this story, but I think a lot of people don't. And I'm going back here to about 2013 and prior. There was a website called the High Power Forum, and it's not a thing anymore. And all of the high power guys back then, we kind of felt like we were sort of a left out, almost a little cult, and of guys that were addicted to the high power, and we were, and so that was a common place for high power, addicts to gather. And Slav and I met there. We met there primarily because my father and I bought Bulgarian high power inspired handguns called the Arcus 98 DAC. And I had written, I was moonlighting at the time as a writer for gunnews.com. And I wrote a review of that handgun, and I posted the review on the High Power Forum. And I get this message from this guy in Bulgaria, and it was Slav. And one thing led to another. We kept communicating, and pretty soon, he was accusing me of being his brother from another mother. And we really started digging into things that had been sort of what we could see maybe had been just left off the table as far as the high power design. About 4 years prior to that, I had my first malfunction in my own personal high power that I'd bought back in 1990. I had about 10,000 rounds through it, and I had never experienced any kind of a malfunction of no irregularity of any kind. And I had gone online, and I figured out that there was a thing called an extractor spring, and that probably that was the culprit for why I was now all of a sudden this thing couldn't get through a whole magazine without having a mishap. And so I went online, and I ordered an extractor spring from a provider, and I also ordered an extra power recoil spring, and that recoil spring came with an extra power firing pin spring. And okay, we're going to see if we can add Slav back into the scene here now. I think
Can you hear me now?
We hear you perfect. I do anyway. Somebody give a thumbs up, but I think this is pretty conclusive at this point. All right, glad you're here, my friend. So anyway, the rest of the story is this is sort of my background prior to Slav and me meeting. And, so I went online, I figured out how to install that extractor spring, and one thing led to another. And I figured out how to install this extra power firing pin spring, which I'm going to confess, I had no idea what the function of a firing pin spring even was at the time. And I installed it, and all of a sudden, and the new recoil spring, and the things I noticed was I had no more malfunctions. Everything seemed to become reliable again. I also noticed that this firearm that originally, when I had gotten it, was a real tack driver, became a tack driver again, and everything is great and life is good. So anyway, I live out in Wild Kingdom, and not too long after that, I get home one night. It's dark, and I'm walking up my sidewalk out here, and there is the largest possum that I had ever seen right there near the sidewalk. And I kind of sort of stomped at it, in its direction, didn't run away. And then it started backing me up the sidewalk. And I thought, well, now this is not going to happen at my house. So I, in a horizontal shoulder holster, I deployed my high power, pulled the safety off, pulled the trigger, and it went click. And the possum is still coming. And I'm still backing up. And the possum is looking more motivated now, I guess. And so I manually cocked the hammer, took aim again, and solved the possum problem. But it took 2 trigger pulls. And so this was my first learning experience in a handgun about the hazards of just changing out singular springs at times. And for folks who haven't, maybe followed all of our material, what had happened is this: is your firing pin spring is what keeps the firing pin away from the primer until that firing pin is smacked by the hammer. And the mainspring on the hammer strut was well past its useful life too, and that's the one that drives the hammer into the firing pin itself. So I had induced that malfunction. By changing out a firing pin spring and not changing out the spring that drives the hammer into the firing pin itself. And if you think about how hazardous that could be in a real life, it's something worse than a possum that maybe, can also have its own gun or something. The implications of that are not good. So, it's definitely something that I never forgot. And then I decided I just want to change out all the springs in this high power. And, so I went looking around for, how to do that, where to get it. I couldn't get all the springs I wanted from one source. So they came from, this source and that source. I found a Browning Field Service manual for the high power. And this would have been the one that back in the day, you had a lot of Browning authorized service centers and things around the country. And this is what they would have used. And it said you're going to need a 3/32 pin punch and a 1/16 pin punch. And, on a very perfect day where no pins are tight, that might get you home. But so anyhow, I fumbled through and I managed to change out, most of the springs, doing it that way. And so that was sort of my inoculation. I remember I bought I ended up buying every 1/16 pin punch at every hardware store, within about 20 miles of where I live. Each one of them seemed to have like 1 or 2, and I would buy them. I kept breaking them. Of course, today we know a lot of those things I was trying to use a 1/16 for as a 5/64. And but I didn't have any of this knowledge at the time. So Slav and I meet, and over in Bulgaria, where Slav is talking to us from, Arcus, the Arcus company had made the Arcus 94 high power. A lot of people are not aware, but they also made the Kareen Mark II and Mark III pistols. And that's a kind of a real little known fact. But that's where they were actually manufactured. There's sort of a difference in the United States and I think the rest of the world, and that is it seems like the rest of the world you can pretty much make something in Bulgaria and send it to Israel and put the grips on or a finish or something, sights, whatever, and you can put made in Israel and like nobody cares. And over in the United States, we don't make it that simple. So anyway, I started relating to Slav, what I had encountered in trying to just, change out springs in my own high power, and what had happened, and the possum story and all of that. And, one thing led to another, and he found that he had a spring manufacturer not too far from where he lives, and they were willing to help us. And our idea was anywhere in a high power that we could better things. We thought, well, we would do that. But what we were really looking for is, how can we compile some springs so a guy can have a spring kit and just change out everything and not run the risk of creating his own malfunctions just by changing out a spring here and a spring there. And that's where the idea of complete spring kits came from, for us. And Slav, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna let you fill in some of the gaps. But do you still remember back in those days how we came up with, how are we going to make a mag catch spring? How are we going to make a recoil spring? How are we going to make a a mainspring?
Basically, it was quite a straightforward process. When we had brand new springs, we could directly copy them and improve them if we decided to. But if I remember correctly, I managed to get some information from somewhere about specific technical details about some of the springs, and then we saw that those springs that we get as samples, they didn't conform to those blueprints. So we go back to the blueprints and we just make them like they needed to be done. And I think this created a better spring. I'm not able to say where this information is came from, but I'm sure some gears are turning inside your head and probably ahead in our viewers. Never mind. The thing that was having most importance for me was the way our spring manufacturer was testing our springs. I'm not sure if you remember this, but I show you a video where they built a contraption for testing the recoil spring for the high power, where a motor was turning and the device was recreating this reciprocating movement of the slide, and they were testing it like 15,000 cycles. Oh, this is my wife. Never mind. So this is a commitment for quality that we needed at that moment. We just wanted to be sure that we have made the correct choice by getting to those guys. There was something else also when I had my Arcus 98 DAC, the compact 98. I needed a recoil spring for it, and this is the gun I didn't get the specific technical information about for the recoil spring. So I was measuring the data from the spring I was having currently in my gun, and I added some dimension here, there, just hoping that it will end up being the original spring. I mean, like lengthwise. Unfortunately, at that moment, I didn't knew what I didn't knew, and I end up with a spring that was not tarred or tarred or whatever it is called in English, if there is such a word at all in English. So basically, the tarring is the process when the spring is ready. You compress it several times to its full compressed state. You leave it there for a couple of seconds, then you release it. You repeat the process several times, and this will give you the end relaxed length of the spring. So I didn't know that. I don't know that, and I ordered the springs for my Arcus with end length being shorter than it needed to be. And one day I just wake up and I see that I just wanted to see the spring, and I opened the Arcus. I compared the old spring to the new spring, and this just got me thinking there's something wrong here. I called the guys, and they explained me everything about the technical part of this problem, and they recreated the springs, and since then I think we are using the same recipe for that particular spring. So yeah, we have the correct guys working for us, with us here about that matter.
Today we've got spring manufacturing happening in Bulgaria and in the United States, but I will give credit to our spring manufacturer in Bulgaria. Their patience has been unbelievable with us, because now I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell on us for a second, Slav, just how sophisticated we were in the beginning. And this also lends itself to why we got to where we got to so slowly. Another part of the story about our high power line of springs was when you and I first met, I had just about every high power clone that had ever, been made at that point. And, from Argentina and, and Arcus and FEG and Browning. And what I had noticed from this was some of these high powers seemed to have, for example, a better trigger than others. And some of them seemed to have a more, likable magazine catch than others, and everything, attributable to springs. So what happened over here, and Slav wouldn't have a big memory of this because he's over there, and but I took apart all these high powers and I compared all the springs, and then I started putting them, sort of mixing and matching. What I realized was all of the different high power manufacturers had not all sprung these things the same way. And so we initially, or at least I initially, took a look at, okay, well, how did, everybody make this spring, and how did everybody make that spring? And through a series of testing each one over here, figured out which seemed to be the best. And so our decisions about a lot of the springs in the high power had to do with taking the best of the best from all the different high power manufacturers, and then making sure that everything we were doing was compatible. Our spring manufacturer over in Bulgaria, and I do want to compliment you on one thing, and that is there is a lot of what I would call old school ways, but they're really not old school from the standpoint that, in our most modern times, the appreciation for the attention to detail, the attention to quality, the pride of workmanship is commendable. And their patience, Slav wrote to me very soon after we got started doing what we were doing, and he had gone to our spring manufacturer over there for the first time. And I believe the story you told me was, 5 minutes after you walked into the place, you're sitting at the CEO's desk and he's taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's correct.
And we were absolutely nobody. We had never commissioned to make a spring ever. And, I would like to think that would happen here or anywhere else in the world, but I'm not so sure. Not from anybody I've talked to anywhere else in the world. But that sort of level of they almost took us under their wing.
There is something more I just wanted to throw in the conversation, that they're not just making springs. I mean, they don't expect us to give them everything a spring is required to have as a technical information. They actually helped us develop some springs, which is something that is very valuable as a service here. I mean, we explained what the springs need to do and what we have as an idea, and that I would dare to say we are friends with the CEO's son. He's also a gun guy, and every time I have the chance to allow him to shoot some guns, I do so. And he's really, you just need to see the smile in his face, and you understand what I mean. Probably this is one of the reasons he's really into what we are doing. I mean, you remember how many spring prototypes we had for the trigger, and he was all head down, and he was looking at the trigger, and this angle should be different. This radius here cannot be like that because this will deteriorate the trigger's spring life and so on. All this information, we will be eventually reaching it, and we will counter it at what price and how long will it take. So this is something, the relationship is on another level, I would say.
We have been uncommonly blessed in both countries, in the United States and in Bulgaria, with people to collaborate and work with, who just seem to be exactly the right person, exactly the right company at the right time. And that is, I think, one of the big stories or possible takeaways of what has made yours and my partnership as effective as it has been. Is it's always seemed like anything that I was deficient on over here, you had covered over there, and vice versa. And that's been going on for about 11 years, and that has been a X factor, I would call it. The next thing that I remember is, so anyway, we end up developing a complete spring kit for high powers, and we get an email from a gentleman, and I believe he was also on the, I'm sure he was on this high power forum, where by then it was everybody had gone over to the 1911 forum because that high power forum disappeared. And so now we're over at the 1911 forum. We've got our own, sort of I guess a merchant page, if you will, at the 1911 forum. And we get an email from a gentleman who has become a great friend. And he said, I was in the British Army, and I was an armorer back in the day when we had the high powers, and we had these tools that helped us work on our high powers. And as it turns out, these tools were designed by Dieudonné Save when he had to, get out of Dodge, get out of Belgium, and flee to Britain, and he blueprinted the Inglis high power, the Canadian Inglis high power that he did when he was there, and he designed these tools that. And so we get this contact from this gentleman, and he said, I've offered these to others, and nobody was interested. And he said, and these were so helpful. And he goes, and I've got the blueprints. And in our world, it's like, would you guys be interested? Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We were kind of like the young couple that gets married and says yes to everything because you have nothing.
It was Paul, I think, Paul Belfield, or Belfield, or his the family name was a bit strange for me, but never mind. Paul is a good friend of ours. Yeah.
Yes, and so he sent us the information, and between Slav and Slav's father, who had a background in working with such kind of metal work, figured out how to manufacture, first the mainspring tool, and then the firing pin retaining plate removal and installation tool that was in there. And then one day I wake up, and I had told Slav, I said, man, I said, over here in the Browning Field Service Manual, the exact instructions are to make, when you're taking the hammer out, to keep the hammer cocked back, their instructions were to make yourself they called it a special tool. And it involved taking a specific kind of nail, bending it twice, that you could, wedge under the beaver tail and over the hammer to keep the hammer cocked back. And I told Slav about that. I'll never forget this. It was like maybe the next day, he sends me a blueprint of what is now our third hand tool, and which is such a more sophisticated tool than a nail. And I never could figure out. I thought, how many high power guys, with these beautiful high powers with these beautiful finishes want a nail under the beaver tail, because inevitably you're going to do damage. You're going to scratch things in that way. And and it was a very, very, very short time. And now we're making what we call today our third hand tool. And the next really, really big thing that I remember and is we by the way, here's a fact for you. I don't think Slav minds me telling this, but we started BHSpringSolutions by Slav throwing in $50 and I threw in $50, and that's how and what we started on, was that level of risk. And it was, of course, it's very slow going at that rate. You got to turn that 50 over a bunch of times to get to 1,000. And we came up with our own spring kits. The guys at the 1911 forum, we needed a little money to buy steel and something to make the mainspring tools. And Slav had made a prototype and we showed them, here's what it is. And the guys on the 1911 forum prepaid for, I don't know, 25 or 50 mainspring tools.
I think 25 is the correct number.
Yeah, that's where the revenue came from to pay for the first 25. And, as you can tell, this is a slow boat to China, guys. When you do things this way, but the learning experience was incredible. Like every day we're learning something and virtually doing everything over email. And so now we get to 2016 and we've got, high power spring kits and we've got tools and things that will help. And we get contacted by a gentleman who's now a great friend of ours, goes by Yankee Marshall on YouTube. And he said, hey, I was told by somebody that you guys are somebody who can help me fix the trigger on my brand new Browning high power, because he had bought a brand new one. And he had measured the trigger break weight and he said, it's coming out between 8.5 and 9 pounds. And he goes, this is so ridiculous. Of course, it's 2016, right? And you just don't expect that. But the Browning high powers out of FN had always been, in essence that. And so we sent him a spring kit. We sent him the tools and a video. It showed him how to take his high power apart. And on that video is still exists, by the way. I looked the other day. And that video, he showed his brand new Browning high power and how he used our tools, what springs of ours he installed, because many of the spring points in the high power, we've got options of, various springs that you can install for different purposes. And he showed right there on his video how this settled down to, just with springs, to about a 6-pound trigger. And our business doubled the following month after he released that video. And, I think there's some information online that doesn't necessarily think that, we are a very conscious company about quality of trigger pull, integrity of trigger pull, crispness of trigger pull, authority of reset of trigger pull. It's sort of like something that was in our DNA and on our minds from day one, because it was one of those things that, number one, had created a lot of trigger jobs in the industry. And it wasn't something that FN or Browning had paid, particularly strong attention to. And I think the understanding of that is FN was really always thinking of the high power as military, law enforcement, security forces, audience. Browning selling those in the United States was kind of like an also ran in the horse race. Browning had Browning high powers just as incidental to FN making FN high powers in Belgium. And, having a great trigger on a high power just was not, they wanted these things to be able to go into storage and come out shooting in 50 years. And they sprung them like that. And that was one of our real focuses, from the very beginning was, through a combination of spring optimizations in the high power, the ability to have a better trigger, but more importantly, that it also retain all of the margins of safety. And I think that theme is one that I would like to emphasize, that is in BHSpringSolutions DNA, and it has been since day one. Is we, you're a shooter. I'm going to tell on you. Slav's a really involved competitive shooter now, and I like to dabble in it when I'm over there in Bulgaria sometimes, and it's fun. But Slav takes it pretty serious, and so needless to say, from the beginning until now, we are really a conscious company about excellent triggers. But maybe the difference is we accomplish excellent triggers without sacrificing margins of safety and without sacrificing anything anywhere. Which, this is a different profile than the old days where a guy goes in and he has a quote trigger job, which is really just removing metal from a couple of parts and shortening the life of the parts, and also decreasing the margins of safety. Slav, go ahead. You take the floor, please. If there's anything at all,
you are doing so right. Yeah, this is the easiest way to mess up a trigger. This is the easiest way to do a perfect trigger and to mess up the trigger. High power is different though. I mean, probably we will need to talk about SFS regarding the trigger improvement, but the easiest way to fix the trigger of the high power is just changing the mainspring, and this will give you some really likable trigger, like you saw on my gun when you were shooting it. What is the mainspring weight of the high power? 32 pounds, right?
OEM was, yeah, with Browning.
Yeah, the one you were shooting in my gun was how much? 9 pounds.
No, come on.
No, I swear to God, it is a 9 pound spring taken from CD75 and a bit altered in order to fit where it needs to fit. There were some changes done to the firing pin spring, and you know that I'm having an Arcus with sear lever type 2, which is not something you see every day. The idea is that trigger drop is never a straightforward process. You need to go with conscious and to keep in mind what every single system, I mean, like either it's high power Glock or for that matter ZIG 320, whatever you choose, there is never change one thing and everything will be fine. No.
Right. Well, among the other things that we optimized in the high power to make the Yankee Marshall's result possible was the trigger return spring, the magazine disconnect spring. We optimized to reduce some pressure of the magazine disconnect on the face of the magazine face. Optimized sear lever spring. It was sort of a series and a combination. Last Friday we were astounded by how AI has taken so much of our information off of our videos, and so be careful what you tell AI. Or they're going to be telling people to use a 9 pound mainspring.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Just I want to mention this. This is a gun that is used specifically and particularly only on the shooting range. It is not self-defense guns. It is currently it is a fun gun made just for having some recreational shooting when there is time for that, actually.
Yeah, and that's
nothing depends on that gun. Nothing depends on that
gun. Slav's Arcus 94 over there has had every time I see it, I think he's done everything possible to this gun that can be done. Then there's something else. And
yeah, even the existence of this gun is abomination. It should not exist.
The next thing that I recall that we did was we took our same approach of finding most optimal springs and then figuring out could we make more optimal springs for the 1911 models, which we did, and then we took on the CZ75, which I think today is probably something that a lot of people have not even discovered about us. But I have to tell you, in the CZ75 world, we've had competition shooters over in Bulgaria who have embraced our CZ75 springs, and these two can make real beneficial differences in all the characteristics of both the double action sight and the single action sight in the CZ75. And a lot of that work was done actually over here. And then you developed in Bulgaria the Makarov spring product as well. And then that brings us up to about the time that we met our chief weapons modifications designer, Léo Hubert. And of course, he's the designer of our SFS system that we have today, and so many things that BHSpringSolutions now has as products. And some of our trips to Belgium have been times I will never forget. Slav and I are over in Belgium one time. The first time we rented a car. The second time we decided to take the train from wherever it was we landed into to Liège. And if I remember right,
it was the main train station in Brussels.
Okay. Well, we had to get a connection or something, and we decided to. It's like midnight, and we decided that we were hungry, and so we go through this train station. It's virtually abandoned, and you wonder, is like this even real? And we find like the front door of the train station. We walk out on the street, and I don't know what was going on in that street, but it was chaos virtually, and like nobody paid attention to us. But there was a lot of activity, and this was like young men, like that I don't know, they were out past their curfew or something. I mean, and it was didn't seem completely civilized, honestly, but we were hungry, so we cut through it and got across to this convenience store that was right across the street, and then ran back through whatever it was that was going on. I actually had a dream about that. I think that was induced by that. You and I were like vigilantes or something in some in some country. I don't even know where we were, but I actually had it wasn't exactly a nightmare because we didn't die. But so we meet Leon, and Léon Hubert is a particularly interesting story. We could go on about Leon for a long time. 35-year designer at FN. The man who is credited with the Browning Mark III high power, the BDA 380, the FN BDA 9, BDA 0. He has to be, in my opinion, at least a partial contributing designer to the Beretta 92, because without the BDA 380 or Beretta 84, you can't get to the Beretta 92 without copying a bunch of his work. And then we meet Leon, and what induced us to get there quickly was he had let us know that he had a new invention, and it was a drop-in manual safety for Glock pistols. And with our previous, real focus on safety in margins in handguns, this seemed like a perfect fit for us. And so we wind up over in Belgium. We meet with Leon. Leon Hubert is 85 years old today, guys. And so needless to say, all the big guys in the industry, they're not interested in employing an 85-year-old gentleman. And we are. He's at the top of his game. We can say that. I mean, he is as sharp as ever. And we have been super glad to have him on our side for about 8 years now. And one of the among the things we learned from Leon was in the SFS system that he designed, he improved the sear hammer engagement that automatically cleans up the high powers trigger, immeasurably, and adds a hammer drop safety, which of course was totally right, appealing to us. And what we recognized was, here's a guy who has developed, both firearms and firearms modifications that simultaneously do two things: improve function, improve reliability, improve trigger pull, while at the same time adding margins of safety. And I think you and I recognized that immediately as this is really, really something special.
And it was tested harshly.
Yes. I
think it should be tested.
I think we have tested everything we have ever done very harshly. The new SIG P320 video series, where that is the first time I ever went up on the house and threw a gun off the house. That's the first, okay? But I thought I had to do that in order to assure myself. But that is true. The first, and I'm going to tell on you here, because this is completely the truth. When we first had a couple prototypes of the Glock safety, we call the tactical safety system for Glock pistols, the drop-in manual safety for Glocks. I duplicated the U.S. Army's drop test, completely passed that. Then we started dropping it higher, and with a weighted magazine, and exceeding the U.S. Army's drop test protocol. And Slav goes, drag it down the road behind your truck, which I didn't do at the time. But in case you guys wonder whatever possessed Mark to drag a P320 down the road behind a pickup truck like we did in part 1 of the SIG series, Slav is the reason for that. Okay, it was I recalled you suggesting that, and I told the guys over here, I said, Slav's going to love this. He's going to be so proud. He was wanting to see me do this with a Glock years ago.
With your Glock, not with mine.
Not with your Glock. I want to let everybody know. I'm going to tell on you a little bit. Since we've been in business, Slav has become a licensed gunsmith in Bulgaria. He is on his way to import-export credentials for firearms and firearms components out of Bulgaria, and has become a quite accomplished competitive shooter. And I know that is something that you have worked very, very hard at. If there's anything you'd like to share about that.
No, if I share something, I need to kill you after that. Actually, my biggest achievement, if I can call it that way, is that I started working with the Glock 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the thing I was most interested is for being a competitive shooter was the trigger pull of the Glock, which is like a monument. It is a threshold for most ridiculous trigger pull you can have out of the box, of course. So one of the reasons for me getting the credentials to export this type of production from Bulgaria is to make this available for us, I mean, for BH and for the customers in the United States also. Don't get me wrong, it is still really boutique manufacturing. I mean, very, very slow and low numbers. But who knows? You might be able to see it and to like it. I don't know. I mean, the market in the United States, you already know what I have developed. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Other than this, it just the fact that I'm a licensed gunsmith at the moment just give me the chance to work with more and more systems, more and more guns to go through my hands and just to admire the engineering work of different creators. For that matter, Glock is insanely easy gun. I mean, it is engineering masterpiece. It just works.
Wow.
Nothing fancy, nothing special like the high power. I mean, the high power is just the way it's built. It's you can see that John Browning was doing something really great, and fortunately didn't manage to ruin it all. But it's a good platform to be worked on.
One of the things I wanted to mention that we started working on with Leon in about 2018, if I'm thinking right, took us 2.5 years, was our complete redesign of the entire trigger subassembly for the high power. And
Yeah.
this was the development of this went from Liège, Belgium, to Bulgaria, to here, and it was going on in all three places all at the same time. And I was the only one who had access to all of the high powers of history, which do have differences inside when you start installing a trigger. Dimensions and things have slight differences, and it affects how springs work. And it took us 2.5 years, not because it needed to take us 2.5 years. We wanted that trigger subassembly to drop in, like at that time, I think the 25 different gens and variants and manufacturers of high powers of history. And it took us 2.5 years to build in enough margin all over the place in order to get compatibility in all of those different models. And when it takes you 2.5 years to get something right, it's pretty easy to, cash in your chips and go do something else, because there's sometimes lower hanging fruit, right in front of your face. And I will never forget Leon sending us an email, and he said, "We will get this, guys. We will get this." And it was Leon that kept us completely in the game. And I also remember that originally Leon had a design for this trigger, which we changed substantially as it turned out in order to get compatibility everywhere. But originally he had an idea of a spring that doubled as a magazine disconnect spring and magazine eject. It also helped your magazine leave the pistol. And for those of you guys who are enjoying the BH Advanced Trigger subassembly today with that magazine eject assist function, that magazine eject assist spring and the whole idea of that dedicated spring being for the purpose of helping to eject your magazine, that happened in Slav's living room after dinner one night. And that is another story that comes to mind. Is there anything else that you want to share? We've got a few questions.
Yeah. Another thing that I just wanted to throw regarding the trigger subassembly, I'm really proud that there was not a single moment that this entire subassembly was just good enough. It needed to be perfect in order to be sent to the market. Probably we need to take a look at some of the comments here.
Yes. I'm going to answer the question starting kind of what on my screen is from the bottom up. it says your Glock safety looks scarily similar to the Glock switch. That I'm almost afraid to say that with AI anymore. We might get this video banned for saying that. Just for artificial intelligence is a purpose. We're not promoting any such thing. That converts a Gen 1 through 5 Glock into full auto. Have you had any queries about it from the from the authorities? No. No, and I can tell you, I am 100% certain that we have sold a small fraction of Glock safeties compared to the other, which seems to have incredible appeal, I guess. But no, we're not a part of that scene you're talking about there at all. And no, we've not. However, I will tell you. We did have government contact about our Glock safety, and it was from the United States Defense Department in 2017 or early 2018. After they prematurely announced the P320 as the winner of those pistol trials, then there was this oops, but it failed a drop test, and they were looking for a backup plan. And Glock's submission of a pistol, their version with a manual safety, had a failure also. There was somebody at the Defense Department obtained a couple of our Glock safeties just by ordering them from us. They put them through all of their tests, all their drops, passed everything. So I got a phone call from a guy with the Defense Department telling us that this passed all of our tests, and of course by this time I knew it would, because I had dropped this thing from 9 feet, at that point, instead of their 4 feet requirement. And he had only one question, and he wanted to know that, if they wanted to go with Glock plus our TSSG, or our drop-in manual safety, could production be moved from Belgium to the United States? Which, of course, what do you say? Yes. It wasn't even our decision at the time, but we figured Leon wouldn't mind, for an order of that size. And so, yeah. And after about 45 minutes on the telephone, the gentleman from the Defense Department kept me on the phone for 45 minutes telling me about all of the patent infringements of Leon Hubert's designs that had been committed against him by just about every firearms manufacturer you could name. And he would tell me the specific places in the guns that something had been, copied that shouldn't have been. And the guy was like a total encyclopedia. And he sounded like he knew Leon Hubert. And I asked him, so much so that I asked him, I said, well, when was the last time you saw Leon? He goes, oh, I've never seen Leon, but we know everything about him. He is the most prolific firearms designer currently breathing air, which I already was convinced of this, but mainly because I owned a Browning BDA 380, and I knew that he was behind that. And so we've had some contact, but it's not for any negative reasons. Another question there about I think the person is talking about, it says double action, single action, high power. I'm assuming that's a firearm that goes by a couple of different names, either the BDA 9 or the HPDA. And we do not have a kit product for those yet. However, we do have all of the springs, and we can provide for you a kit. And actually, we have a kit product that is on the way and is going to be very soon at our website. But if you give us a call, that is a product that, yes, we can fulfill. Mark, are your P320 reliability kits available now, and will they work on every P320 variant? Currently, we provide the sear stabilizing sear springs only. We are in development right now, and will soon be in production of complete spring kits for the P320. And really, our conversation at this point kind of brings us to BH's latest chapter of our book, being the SIG P320. Well, I will throw in one other thing here, that the Slav's been developing some modifications and optimizations for Glock triggers over in Bulgaria. While he was doing that, I was developing complete spring kit products for all of John Browning's designed handguns that are currently basically not being well served by anybody at all. And that would be your FN and Colt little 25 ACP vest pocket pistols, your 1910, the FN 1910, also known as the Browning 1955, the Colt 1903 and the Colt 1908. And those are, we decided to just go ahead and run the table on all of John Browning's handguns that he had designed. And I feel like I really have to mention this. Another thing that has been, I guess, in our DNA from the beginning, and it's evidenced by our very first packaging material, which was our kit cards that we had printed for our high power spring kits, and we designed them. And on the outside of the kits, and still today, it says, "Build it strong enough and then double it, John M. Browning." And I had become a student of John Browning's patents by that time, and so many times when you and I, Slav, got to a point in development of something, some spring, some system, whatever it was, and we had options, and I distinctly remember many times asking ourselves, what do you think John Browning would do? And this has been a North Star, if you will, for us. I admit I was inoculated. By the time I think I was 5, I was already convinced that John Browning was near deity, not deity, but near deity, like God with a small g. And so that was a natural thing for me, was to look at John Browning's examples, his guidance in his patents, which is absolutely meticulous. If you've not had a chance to read it and get into that, it's stunning. The insights that this guy had in the late 1800s and early part of the 20th century, really, you can get convinced very, very fast that there had to have been something supernatural involved with that, because these are still, things that you can, and we are guiding our ship by. Quite literally. I know that, throwing around John Browning's name is, you can, like, everybody in the firearms industry loves to name drop John Browning. And maybe there are some who have committed more to his principles and strategies than we have, but I can say that we have packaging material from the beginning that shows that we were running down that rail, very much then. We will have P320 spring kits, complete gun spring kits. Probably that will not include recoil systems, though, because at this point, I don't think I even know yet how many different recoil arrangements there are in the P320. There's like, good night, you can have, like, from the factory, like 40 or 50 different configurations, 5 different calibers, different barrel lengths. Some of these are assemblies that need to be changed only as an assembly. You really can't do a spring change on them. You need to replace the full assembly. Some of them are single sprung, like a single spring, like your longer barrels, 9 millimeters. I'm sure we will make those springs. I think we'll have longer spring life than what SIG is recommending for those springs as well. And there's something else I want to just share, because this is how we came up with our recommendations for the safety margin add backs that we came up with for the SIG P320. And nobody would know this, Slav, unless I tell it. So uh, we decided to start looking into the P320. And it was back in the July August timeframe of 2025, and it was very, very, very quickly when we started really digging into the details and the systems involved in the P320 that the notion that we can add margin significantly in the sear spring area, which is a really important one. And we were working with that, testing that, going through time periods of install, doing so many different, so many compressions manually of the springs, because there's just, after you find a spring for an application, and it seems to work, that's one thing. But proving it and getting comfortable that you haven't, overkicked your coverage somewhere, you have to prove that. And so we were still kind of in that phase. And, one day my computer beeps, and it's this, diagram of the SIG 320 sear and striker, and, a couple of different points with arrows pointing to them. And it was Slav, and the increased sear striker engagement area, guys, that's Slav. What we are doing and what the High Power Medic is doing today for the P320s, it doesn't happen from us without both of us, without Slav and me, because and Slav knows this. When I got that across my computer, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, yes, and I couldn't even sit still. I mean, it was like the blood started pumping like twice as fast immediately in my body, because I was like, that's it, that is it. And BHSpringSolutions has been going on like this now for 11 plus years, where it has just seemed like, what I may lack here, you fill in the gaps over there, and vice versa. And I wanted to point that out, because it's yours and my collaboration that that truly, literally has made that possible. Slav has more experience, frankly, with the subject of that sear striker engagement than I did. And the sear spring part, this was something that, it wasn't dreamed up. I was looking at striker fired pistols, resistance on sears in striker fired pistols, Leon's FNS9, John Browning's 1910. And we were dynamometering the sears over here and seeing how much spring pressure are on these sears of these striker fired pistols that have incredible, reputations for safety. So I'm going to take a quick look, Slav, at the questions here. If you have anything to add to this.
No, I was just also looking at the questions that just came in.
I see a question there about the Springfield SA35. We have an entire Springfield SA35 evaluation and analysis series for the Springfield SA35. That is a Turkish-made high power, and 3 of the 4 Turkish-made high powers, the SA35, the Inglis, and the Century Centurion, they have, if you want them to be Browning level reliable, we have only seen that happen when we re-engineer the entire extractor region of those pistols and use a Browning factory extractor. And that's something that I forgot to mention too, is a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, this coming week, we received all of Browning's factory high power parts that remained in their inventory when they stopped servicing the model. And I have to tell you, still to this day, that is like the highest compliment, that one of the highest compliments I think we've ever had was Browning. They chose us for the destination for the high power parts. And they actually chose us and found out who we were. They were wondering, why is this guy named Mark, buying more high power parts from them year after year after year. And this was like from 17 to 2020, 21. And they caught me because of our evaluation and analysis of the Springfield SA-35. They were watching this because the SA-35 was like the first American gun company named to release a high power since they had discontinued. So, some of the folks at Browning were pretty interested in this, and they figured out from that series that, this guy's been buying all these high power parts, and he's, now on these, evaluating the SA-35 and using Browning parts to fix this and fix that. All of the Turkish high powers are reverse engineered high powers. And in our opinion, it is impossible to reverse engineer the high power design perfectly. And we could go into a lot of technical reasons for that, or you can take our word for it, but I can prove that. That it is an impossible to reverse engineer perfectly. And I know that, with all of our today's technology and everything, that's hard to believe that is impossible. But I will say this: Gersan has done a commendable job. Compared to a Browning, there's still, a couple of things that aren't as, robust or as good. But generally overall, they've done a competent job in the extractor region. The dimensional, there's just dimensional things that don't lend themselves to optimal reliability in the SA-35, in the Inglis, and in the Century, that's where it is on those. But all high powers of history, all the clones, all the Turkish clones, we have devised ways. These are not do-it-yourself kind of things. These are things that have to be handled by our certified components installer, the high power medic. But we can get Browning level reliability in any high power so far that's ever been made, including all of the Turkish clones. But it just takes a little bit of effort on our part, or on the high power medic's part. But it is possible, and it's not something that's going to cost you a second mortgage or anything like that. I guess that's the best answer to that question. And I've got to say is I think the Turkish clones mostly come from Gersan, including the latest Inglis models. Not true. Gersans come from Gersan. The other ones come from elsewhere. We can say that for sure because we've dimensionally compared virtually everything in all of these clones. And I'm talking about critical things like they're not using the same extractors. They're not using, multiple things give this away, especially when you find anything that needs a little extra fitting in one and doesn't need an extra fitting somewhere else. This is sort of like the dead giveaway that you're dealing with a different somebody's different blueprint or somebody's different manufacturing. Slav, you see any questions there you want to take on?
There was Jojo 11 says this Zig says change springs 3,000 to 4,000 cycles. How long will your improved springs last? Longer than that. But we still recommend manually inspecting and checking if everything is fine. The springs are straight. If they are bent, they should be changed. If they are dimensionally different than one from another, or obviously different than from the state when they were installed, they also need to be changed, because this is Sear Springs. They are responsible for your safety.
This is in the 320, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I want to add on to that. I believe the SIG's recommendation for their sear springs is 3,000 cycles, 3 years or 3,000 cycles. And I believe we have a recommendation of 5,000 cycles. Highly likely that you're going to go beyond that. I have manually compressed those springs just in, this is not science. This is sitting around just, compressing those springs with a trigger, well over 5,000 times, nothing happens. We were making that recommendation as a best practices approach, but what Slav was just saying there, the importance of that can best be help you understand by, if you just understand, you can envision this, okay? On the back of my personal P320, I have removed a part of the back cover plate so I can see that sear striker engagement. And if you take the sear springs out completely and you're holding your handgun upright, so the slide's up here, and you rack the slide and it goes forward and there's no sear springs in there at all, generally you're going to have no sear striker engagement at all. But if you can turn it upside down and rack the slide, you'll have sear striker engagement every time. So gravity still works too. But where I'm going with this is that is a very good illustration of how dependent that model is on those springs. So dependent that gravity itself can change the positioning of that sear. Springs are everything. So, my counsel on this one, and as a person actively carrying a Condition 1 P320 with me all the time now, is you want to have the knowledge, being able to take out that FCU, access those sear springs, pull them up, take a look, periodically, and just see. They should continue to be straight. They should look like they did when they went into the handgun. If they don't, change them. Personally, and we in the High Power Medic, so far in the test pistols that we have installed those springs, and they remain in them, and we continue checking them, and we've done thousands and thousands of manual manipulations and compressions, and we've not seen an instance where our springs would require changing. But we want to emphasize to folks that this is a sear arrangement in the P320 that is fully dependent on sear spring pressure being adequate and staying correct. Deformation of those springs, the environment for those two springs dictates that if you have deformation, you're going to have springs getting into springs, and this is going to cause a bad problem with the ability of the springs to exert their normal force. Yeah, there you go. You don't want to chance that. So, being able to periodically just lift that sear up, and there's a way to do that, with the FCU. It's a couple of steps, and it releases the sear, and you can see those, and that's worth it. It's something that I'm doing in the P320 that I'm carrying, and we encourage folks. We have a video actually about that. We encourage folks to do that. And in fact, the video I'm talking about, I think it is in our part 3, if I'm not mistaken. And it shows on the manual safety models and the non-manual safety models how to release the sear, let you see those sear springs. And there are questions, Slav?
There's a guy, I'm sorry, I cannot read his name properly because I have a mid-80s and 40s mid to Western high power, and I watched your video about your full-length guide rod. I commented on my reluctance to drill my slide to it, and about how it might affect value. There are 2 points here.
Okay.
First, you will drill your slide, which is always be changing the value. For some people, it will increase the value because you're going to install a BH component, which is superior to the OEM part. For the purist, it will draw the value down because it will be drilled. It won't be OEM part anymore. For me, the proper way to do it is not the proper way. The right decision is to make it. I mean, to drill it and to get all the advantages of this assembly, because we are dealing here with Fort Smith & Wesson, and we know what pain in the most southern part of the back it is to install the guide, the recoil assembly in that gun.
The 40s, the recoil spring is difficult to install. They're difficult to rack with that one spring, and the other thing is with a single spring, you've got about 1,000 to 1,200 rounds of use out of your recoil spring, and it really needs to be changed at that point. That has been our experience. We have a couple of friends who are competition shooters, and they use a 40 Smith & Wesson high power, and they're telling us the same thing, that with a single spring, 1,000 rounds, they got to put in a new recoil spring. Slide cycling is getting too hot. The spring is giving up the ghost. And so, I had no issues at all whatsoever myself with drilling my 40. The benefits for me, because my 40 Smith & Wesson high power has been, and in the future will be, one of the handguns that I use for carry and or home defense. And I think it is so far in our history, our FFL partners who have say purchased high powers, like the High Power Medic, and installed our components, done refinishes, superior sight, superior trigger. These firearms have sold at premium prices, which is gratifying, honestly, to us, because many of these handguns that have been called BH masterpieces or BH advanced high powers, these are the things are just full of BHSpringSolutions components, with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 actual Browning factory components left, and everything else in them is BH. And what they have fetched on the market has been very much premium prices. So I guess from that standpoint, high powers with our modifications installed and with our betterments do not seem to have suffered in the market as far as value. So I'll leave it there. That's been the history of modifications, with those so far. Any more questions we can address, Slav?
The last one, the high power question: do I need a special fitting for a Fort Smith & Wesson conversion to 9mm, or is one of your drop-in barrels a 9mm ejector and 9mm magazine enough?
Okay. The answer to your question is dropping just a straight 9mm high power barrel into a 40 slide is going to leave you a lot of extra room at the barrel bushing, because the 9mm barrel is an outer diameter. The outer diameter of the barrel is smaller than a 40 Smith & Wesson outer diameter. Can it be done? Yes, I have done it. Yes, we've tested it. We have not found that accuracy suffers. However, a very new recoil spring is important for that, because the recoil spring is going to end up being your main holds the barrel still when the kaboom happens, because you're going to have less influence of the slide barrel bushing. There is an alternative that we can, I think, throw out for this. One alternative would be, if you find a 9mm slide, that would be one. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe we have 1 or 2 factory slides left. So your better bet would really be to have a second slide assembly than to use a 9mm barrel in a 40 slide. It can be done, and every time I have done that and tested it, or when we have done it and tested it, I didn't notice accuracy suffer. We didn't see accuracy suffer, frankly, at all. But again, we're talking either a Browning factory barrel or a BH advanced 9mm barrel. And what I'm talking about here, specifically the importance of that is the relationship of the barrel lugs to those slide recesses they mate to. That is another big part of holding that barrel still for accuracy purposes when you when you fire a high power. And to this extent, I can say that having Leon Hubert with us, the guy that blueprinted the Browning Mark III high power, has had distinct advantages when we make components that go in high powers. This guy, without any doubt, has more high power knowledge than any individual who has ever breathed air possible. But it's, just because of how the high power was developed, John Browning didn't completely develop out the P35. Dieudonné Save did, but didn't, but derived it from work that started with John Browning. And, Leon Hubert, has been like, the same thing that we have always asked, what would John Browning do? Because it seems like he thinks like John Browning. I can give you a lot of examples of why I say that, but the very first thing that Leon Hubert did as far as gun design was the FN competition model, which is a longer barrel, and it's a different gun. It's a high power, but it's a different gun. He re-leveraged the sear lever, and he put in a whole different magazine disconnect design. That is his first credited design to Leon Hubert. It was like, as soon as he got from aircraft engines at FN over to firearms, the very first thing that he got to play with was fixing some things in the high power. Okay.
How good Leon knows the high power?
How would what?
How good Leon knows the high power. When we ask him something, he doesn't answer just something, but he tells you A4, which is the coordinates in the blueprints where this problem is.
Yes.
Well, this speaks enough.
There was one time I want to tell one more quick story here, real fast, Slav. You'll remember this because when we were developing the BH Advanced Trigger subassembly, one of the things that I noticed in Leon's original prototype for that was the placement of the trigger in the trigger guard. And the P35 traditionally has had this trigger that has been sort of forward in the trigger guard, and it's sort of like this upward facing trajectory that when you pull it, obviously you're pulling down and back. And Leon repositioned it, deepened it in the trigger guard, and it creates this much more straight back trigger pull. And then I realized this is so much like everything that John Browning did in his 22 target pistol that FN made and Colt made, called the Woodsman. And it hit me one day, and I thought, I wonder if Leon took inspiration from that, because you can lay the guns over each other, and it's like, you could almost accuse Leon of copying, and I remember I wrote this email, and it wasn't short, and I was looking for, where did this notion of, where did he get this notion of changing the positioning inside the trigger guard of this high power trigger, and the straight back part and the width, and and that kind of stuff. And I was looking for something technical, and I get this email back, and it says, the trigger positioning in the trigger guard is the way it is because the trigger finger likes it better. That was it. I was expecting something technical, but who can argue with that? He was 100% right. Okay. Any estimate on when you expect barrels will be back in stock? Yeah, we expect to be getting those back in stock about 30 days from now. I wish I could tell you more about that. I can tell you what the problem is. There is a couple of things. There were several shops that barrel makers depend on for some of the specific steps in producing barrels that did go bankrupt last year, and they're no longer in business. The barrel production, pistol barrel production in the United States has really consolidated. We don't manufacture the barrels, but they are manufactured from our technology, which is from guess who? Leon Hubert. And they are the only, and our technology can only be used to make the BH advanced barrel. And there is an extraordinary amount of barrels being made in the United States right now for pistols, and heavily leaned toward guess what? Threaded barrels. And it's because that tax for suppressors went away, and the demand for pistol barrels, specifically threaded ones, is just absolutely insane. Your main biggest pistol barrel manufacturers that we've talked to here in the last couple of months, they are producing at approximately ×3 what they were producing a year ago, and it's all heavily weighted towards threaded barrels. So this is, as far as we're concerned, this is sort of a temporary problem, but that is the problem. Is barrel production in the United States has been consolidated. Another challenge, for BHSpringSolutions is, because this would beg the question, okay, well, why wouldn't you produce those over in Bulgaria? Because over in Bulgaria, that barrel's a gun. It's not a barrel. It's a gun. It's got to be serialized, and it is treated like a gun. And so are slides over here, different. The frame is the gun, or the FCU and the P320, that's the gun. The slide is a part, the barrel is a part. Am I right, Slav? It's
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have to get like a permit for like an extra barrel over there? Is that the deal?
I just did.
You just did?
I just did for a threaded barrel, yeah.
Yeah.
A separate permit for, and it was written in my permit as a separate weapon. Just one barrel.
As a separate weapon?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I can use it in every gun it fits in.
Right.
But it is separate. But
one of the things that I'm going to tell on us about, because I think it's very cool, we've got some we've got some videotape that's on YouTube, and it's got some age on it now at this point. But Slav took a collapsible, one of Leon's inventions, which is a collapsible or folding foul buttstock.
Yeah, it was folding buttstock for foul.
Yeah, and developed a pistol to carbine conversion for a high power, where you can slip your high power up into this, what it is, and you got a shoulder stock, and you got your high power, and a vertical front forestock. It's a beautiful thing to shoot. And over there, nobody cares. Over here, oh my God, that's a short barreled rifle, and the vertical front forestock even makes it even worse. And here, this thing, I can't even have this over here. I have hoped that regulation would someday disappear, because my goodness, you talk about something you can shoot flat fast, or fast and flat. Put your high power in a stock with a vertical front foregrip. Man, you can lay them in there just so blissfully. And we've got, so I get to go over there and play with that with Slav, and nobody cares, including the government. To them, it's not even what it is over here. But a barrel is a separate weapon for you, and we ship barrels around as they're what they are. They're a gun part, which is unregulated in the United States primarily, and for the most part. Folks, we're going to wrap this up. We've been going a little bit longer than we had anticipated. We've still got questions coming in. I do want to end this by saying a couple of things. First of all, you folks that from the very beginning of BHSpringSolutions, I remember I told Slav, I don't want to call our customers customers. People can be a customer anywhere, and we ought to have a name for our customers. So when you are a patron of BHSpringSolutions, or you subscribe to our email newsletter, or you subscribe to our YouTube channel, that automatically makes you what we call a BH veteran. And we are dedicated to you. The other sort of test for virtually everything we have done, and this has been several times in our history. I have asked this question, and Slav has asked this question, and when we get to a fork in the road, so to say, and I think the last time this was asked, it was Slav asking the question, what is the best thing for BH veterans? BH veterans are the reason we exist, and the reason that we get up tomorrow morning and go to work. And I hope you can understand how sincere we are about that. We know who butters our bread, and we are eternally grateful, thankful to you guys. BH veterans, we also have another name for you, and it's called friends. And we owe everything that we have been able to undertake and do and be. We owe every bit of it to you, because except for Slav's initial $50 and my initial $50, we've done everything we've done on revenue virtually, and that's you guys. And we appreciate your confidence in us. We hope that we can always be worthy of your trust, your confidence, referring other people to us. It means more to you than you'll ever know. We have no goals and objectives of being a company that becomes so big that we have to start thinking about going public, that kind of thing. I'm talking about as far as selling stock and things like that. It's just not. We're still creating modifications for our own firearms, and then deciding, do you think our friends would enjoy this too? And that's how a product with BHSpringSolutions usually becomes a product, is we're using it, proving it to ourselves, throwing it off the house, whatever. And long before it lands in your mailbox, or long before it's installed by the high power medic, and it's that's just who we are. We're not out here looking to beat anybody else up, or outdo the Fortune 500. And it's just not what we're about. But we get great gratification out of serving you, and you have never let us down, and hopefully we also never let you down. That is our goal. Slav, you have anything to say?
You say it so beautifully, I cannot add anything. I can say it in Bulgarian, but probably just two people will understand me.
I also want to say, my friend, my partner, thank you for the last 11 years. The way that we collaborated together in combination on the P320 is just an accurate picture of how virtually everything we have ever done has always come together. And I thank you for that, for your dedication, and also to all of BHSpringSolutions, our staff, our certified components installers, everyone involved with us has been with us now for years. We don't run a revolving door as an employer. We work with people that are really dedicated, and one of the very first things that happens when they come to work for us is they get introduced to our BH veterans policy, and that is, customer is a nasty word. You don't say that here. And help them, come to understand that and everything. Folks, thank you very, very much for watching this with us. All you guys who have been sending these questions, interacting with us. Seriously, we appreciate you. You've made it worth us doing this today and being here. And with that, I'm going to sign off, folks. I'm Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions.
Thank you, guys. I'm Slav, BHSpringSolutions, Bulgaria.
Take care.
Everywhere.
Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Take care, guys.